Hello and welcome. My name is Suzanne Wagstaff. I am the Director of Alumni Networks and Regional Programs, and I work for the Washington University Alumni Association. I'm very excited to welcome our alumni, parents, and current students and friends to today's virtual event, The Photographs of Ruth Orkin, a pioneering American photographer featuring alumni Mary Engel. Now, before we begin, I want to explain the format for today's session. You will only see and hear me, today's presenter, and her presentation. Today's program will last about 1 hour, and we encourage you to participate and interact by introducing yourself in the chat box. We also encourage you to ask questions at any time. And to do this, please type a question into the Q&A or the chat box at any time during the talk. Following the presentation, we will have time for your questions. This webinar is being recorded and we will share it following on the Alumni Association YouTube channel. Now it is my pleasure to introduce today's presenter. Mary Engel, an alumna of Washington University, is the founder and president of the American Photography Archives Group. She is an award-winning filmmaker and the director of the Orkin Engel Film and Photo Archive. She has been the director of the Ruth Orkin Photo Archive since its inception in 1985. Engel works with photography galleries, museums, and auction houses in the United States and abroad, and has published 4 catalogs of photography. Mary's first film, Ruth Orkin, Frames of Life, premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 1996 and went on to screen at many other festivals. This film was selected by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences as one of the outstanding documentaries of 1996. Her film, Morris Engel, The Independent, premiered on Turner Classic Movies in 2009. She is also a contributing producer of Ordinary Miracles, The Photo League's New York, which was released in 2011. Mary is also the 2017 recipient of the Griffin Museum of Photography Focus Spotlight Award. Please help me welcome Mary Engel.
Hi, here I am. I hope you can hear me. Thanks so much, Suzanne. I really appreciate your invitation to be here, and I'm really happy to be here. I had a great experience at WashU. Here I am with a friend who visited me from Oberlin. I loved the campus. I loved the park. I loved the arch. I loved independent study I did with Professor Beinfeld. I have a couple friends from high school who were at WashU. I have 5 lifelong friends who I met at WashU. And my dear friend, Helen Kornblum, who is on the collections committee at the Kemper and happened to talk to my mother when I was a student and invited me into her home for dinner. And our relationship is a lifelong as well. And I'm forever grateful to her. So if you indulge me for a minute, I'll go back to the film that I made, sort of changed the direction of my life because it was for the retrospective at ICP, the International Center of Photography in New York in 1995, and it got into Sundance. I had never made a film, even though my parents were filmmakers and photographers. I didn't not want to be a photographer or filmmaker. I just didn't, it wasn't something I was pursuing. I was in front of the camera when I was a kid, and I'll show you a couple of pictures from that. But I was a trainee, as Suzanne mentioned, at the William Morris Agency, and I was at Sundance as a trainee and a filmmaker. And I thought, gee, do I want to represent all these crazy actors and artists and writers, or do I just want to represent my parents? So my parents went out, and in 1996, I left William Morris and just started representing them completely. So here they are in the height of their film career, Morris Engel and Ruth Orkin, photographers and filmmakers. And I'll tell you a little bit about the film they made as well. Here's my mother She always had a camera, but she was never intrusive. It was just there. People always say, what was it like? And I said, it was just part of who she was and who we were as a family. And as a result, I have thousands of photos in wonderful scrapbooks to remind me of my childhood. Here's with me and my father, one of my favorite photos of me shaving. You're gonna laugh, maybe. I can't see the reaction, but she had 500-watt floodlights in every room, so she wouldn't miss something. But again, it was not posed or intrusive. It just who she was. Fire Island. This is, I did a lot of commercials and voiceovers and extras in movies when I was a kid. This is my first commercial, Bufferin, Kool-Aid. Again, her photographs and the films were always part of my life. You know, there were exhibitions early on, but more of them happened later. The films, Little Fugitive, which I'll tell you about, we used to show at my birthday parties, and they were just always there. The film and photography was always a big part of my life. This is our family at one of my mom's solo shows. I like to say that the Oscars was almost the religion of our family, because that was the most important evening. We were Jewish, but it was not a religiously Jewish family, more culturally Jewish. And Ruth always wanted me to know who the directors, the Jewish directors, were in Hollywood. She had a long, close connection to Hollywood from when she was young. So here she is with my grandmother, Mary Ruby, who was in the silent films and also in a vaudeville act. And my grandfather, Sam, my mom's dad, made collectible toy boats called the Orkin Craft Company. Somehow my grandparents let my mother take this trip. She had planned a trip across the country when she was 17 in 1939. And there's some photos, and I'll show you a couple. She biked over 2,000 miles. She hitched across the desert, but it's a tremendous, tremendous story and a tremendous record, and fairly pioneering. Again, she was 17. Here she is, finally got to the World's Fair, and she was by herself. And I have a diary, and there's been interest from Hollywood in a movie. So it's something that I'm continuing to work on, maybe doing a book on or doing a short film about. Here's the camera that she used, a Pilot 6. This is a classic photo from Times Square, again, 1939. This is what she did with the photos, and I have about 15 pages of, these are all little proof contact sheets that she cut out, and all of that white, writing is her captioning every single photograph. And some of them are fairly impressive for a 17-year-old. Here's some press that she got. She ended up taking a bus back, but there's a diary and a lot of interesting photos from the trip. She took another hostel trip in Cape Cod when she was in her 40s. Here's her first business card. She moved to New York in 1943 and took baby pictures by day and was a nightclub photographer. This is her darkroom in her kitchen. Nothing fancy. She did whatever she had to do to take the pictures and to print them and develop them. This is her kitchen, you can see. This is her first published photo, VE Day, 1945. It was used in the Macy's handbook. She loved classical music, and she went out of her way to go up to Tanglewood to shoot the musicians. And the Boston Symphony Orchestra suggested that they didn't need anybody, but in fact, they ended up needing her. And she went up for several summers, made her own souvenir book, and the photos are incredible from that time period. This is actually, this is Bernstein, Leonard Bernstein. She has extensive photos of him. Leonard Bernstein and Marian Anderson. This is Aaron Copland, Leonard Bernstein, and Serge Koussevitzky, the conductor. This is from a 7-day assignment she had for life following Bernstein. And this is in the green room at Carnegie Hall, and that's his sister behind him. But everybody comments on how handsome he was, but he was always smoking. Incredible, incredible man, obviously larger than life. And he spoke at Ruth's memorial 3 months, after she passed away, and Isaac Stern played the violin, which was wonderful. So this is an example of shooting in her neighborhood. Basically you shoot what you know. This was the Gansevoort Pier, which is where the Whitney Museum is now. She lived on Horatio Street. So this was sort of just almost at the end, a block or two away. This is one of my favorites. This is Comic Book Readers. She always talked about people waiting. And again, the light, this is the old Penn Station. I wonder what she would have thought about the new Penn Station, which just opened in New York City, which I haven't been to yet, but I'm told there's terrific light there. But there was great light in the old Penn Station. People were waiting. So she said they were great subjects, like this guy who's called David. I think when you can keep looking at a photograph, at least for me, and you see it, and then you look again and you see something else, that's what tells you you have a pretty good photograph, hopefully. But it's up to every viewer to interpret a photo for themselves, obviously. Sorry. Again, parades was a big favorite of hers. There were lots of them. There's some great photos. And she obviously loved shooting kids. So here are some, I think, just some special photos from parades. Some of these I found recently. I've been scanning images that I didn't know I had. So these are interesting to me because they're almost new. And she may or may not have printed these, but as far as I'm concerned, she shot them. So it's okay to print. Every photographer has different philosophy or archives about what should be or shouldn't be seen. This was recently at the Museum of the City of New York in an exhibition, and now in their permanent collection. This is just a little boy having a hard time on the street, and it just says so much. And he was so well dressed, but sad, And this is another little boy we just found in front of a circus poster from, obviously, at the circus, outside the circus. So in 1951, she went to Israel with the Israeli Philharmonic, and she ended up staying on a kibbutz, living on a kibbutz for 2.5 months. This is a little girl she did a picture story on called Tirza. She loved just shooting this little girl. Here's another one. If you notice, one of the things, I'll show another photo later, but she did a lot of sequences, and she did photos that were, reminiscent of, series like cinematic movies, because she was never able to shoot film. She wanted to be a cinematographer, but the union didn't let women in, and she never really got to shoot. This is one of her most iconic photos that people seem to react to, called Jewish Refugees Looking Through the Porthole. So in Italy, she met, this is Nina Lee Craig, whose nickname was Jinx. This is the Hotel Berchielli in Florence. And they were traveling after the war. This is 1951. And Ruth was trying to make money to stay in Europe. And she said to Jinx, let's go around and shoot a picture of what it's really like to be here. And there were, it was, as I said, few women at that time, certainly Americans. So here's one. This is Jinx with her goggles. This is, again, fairly well known. This is Jinx and a friend that they met in Italy. This is called Couple in MG. This is the classic photo, American Girl in Italy. You may or may not know. There's a huge backstory to this. I'll just tell you a little bit, and then I can certainly answer more questions later. But everybody wants to know whether was it set up, was it not set up? I will say that it was semi set up, only in the fact that Jinx was walking down the street and it sort of happened. And my mother was in the middle of the street. This is right by Cafe Gilli at the Piazza di Repubblica. And my mother told Jinx to go ahead and do it again and told the man on the motorcycle to tell the men not to look at the camera. But I don't think they were interested in the camera. I think they were interested in Jinx. And everybody has different interpretations of it. And I don't want to get into it. And it's okay, however you want to look at it. But the most important thing is that Jinx felt that she was a strong woman going through. It was a different era. It's a different culture. And she didn't see it as anything that was negative at all. And my mother was also there, obviously, with her. It was a very productive time for both of them. So they and I try to keep it remembered as a positive photo and not looked at in any negative way, if possible. This was an article that it appeared in the year later in Cosmopolitan. There's 5 pages. It was called When You Travel Alone. So this is, she's back in New York, and this is called The Card Players. This was actually an example of what I was talking about when I talk about shooting in sort of a cinematic style. This was a little girl who lived in her neighborhood. If you see what's going on, she's playing cards and we'll see who wins in a minute. But it was included in the Museum of Modern Art, Family of Man. It was the only sequence that Steichen included. This is my mom, Ruth, and Edward Steichen. He had said we couldn't leave little Marilyn out. And the Family of Man was a very prestigious exhibition. And he was very supportive of her work. She shot a lot of celebrities. Again, this is only a little tidbit of all the work. There's over 300 images on the website. There's lots of articles. What I made available too is the film, as I mentioned earlier, Frames of Life. I made the streaming link available on the website on the Ruth at 100 section. And I put the password there so you can watch it in its entirety and learn even more about her if you're interested. Narrated by Julie Harris, who was one of her subjects. But this is Lauren Bacall. Ruth was shooting on assignment Humphrey Bogart, and he asked if she wanted to come up to the hotel room and meet his wife, Lauren Bacall. So she did. This is at a private party at Marion Davis' house. And it was a hidden camera. This is Joan Crawford. There's a whole sequence of all the other people who were there: Lana Turner, Gary Cooper, Edward G. Robinson, Jeff Chandler, all these old movie stars. It's interesting just to see them. This is an iconic photo of Albert Einstein. She was hired to shoot him because 100 men had given $10,000 each to the university, and she had to shoot him with every single man. And she talked about how patient he was because she only had one camera and she had to reload the film of 36 every time she ran out. And she said he was very generous and patient. And this was at a lunch afterwards where he was laughing. Marlon Brando, this was in Hollywood, and he was flirting with her and asked her where her skirt was from because she had just come back from Italy and was wearing an interesting pattern. This is Woody Allen, 1963 at the Met. She loved shooting from windows and from different vantage points. This is one, this is another one. This is again from her apartment. She lived in 3 apartments. The first one from 1945 to 1950, which was the Horatio Street. Then from 50 to 55 here, which was West 88th Street between Central Park and Columbus. Anybody who knows the city, you'll see that this bar is now a restaurant called Bella Luna. This is called Man in Rain. And this is another classic photo from her window on 88th Street called White Stoops. She had some early color. I haven't even scanned everything or gotten to everything, but some of them I just found and we've printed and we've exhibited. And this is one of the ones I think it's pretty. It's pretty. It's historical. It's neat. This is another one of billboards in Times Square. And another window, hats and caps. So I can't leave out my father, Morris Engel. He was even earlier than Ruth. And his, some of the people that were important to him was a photographer, Paul Strand. And some of his early friends were Bernice Abbott, Helen Levitt. And he joined the Photo League when he was 18. And the Photo League was an important organization of photographers who wanted to make photos that had some social importance, which they did. And they lasted till 1951 when the government closed them down and accused them of being communists. But there are a couple great books out on the Photo League. And there was a wonderful show at the Jewish Museum in New York City in 2011. And he taught there. And Ruth first went there and was going to take his class, but there's a funny line in my film where it says, but I didn't want to take a class just to meet a guy, but years later I married him, which she did. And she joined in 1947 as a political protest, but she wasn't an early member. Morris also worked on PM, which was a newspaper. This is Babe Ruth, one of the first to give photographers credits. He on the staff was Ouija, Margaret Burke White, some names you may or may not know, but important photographers. This is called Harlem Merchant. As part of the Photo League, they did projects, and this was called the Harlem Document. This is one of my father's better known images. Again, for me, I hope for you, it says a lot and you can keep looking at it and see different things. This is another photo called Rebecca. There's a whole series he did on her with her mother and sisters. And again, he grew up in Williamsburg and Coney Island, so he shot what he knew. This is Coney Island. And then also he, like my mother, did lots of kids. And he also was in the Navy for 4 years and landed on D-Day on Normandy. And he said he says it, he lived to tell about it, which is true. A couple of photos, but there's plenty more. Later, he did a series on telephone booths that he loved, which barely exist, at least in New York City. I don't know about other cities, but probably not. He loved shooting in Chinatown. This is 57th Street. This is a photo that he had printed and it was in the archive, but I really wasn't familiar with it until a rapper, A$AP Ferg, somebody my son likes, posted it. And as you can see, it got 47,000 likes. At the time, A$AP had 2.4 million followers. Now he has 4 million. I actually was able to meet him and we got him to put Morris's photo credit on it. And in a case like this, I just said, it's fine to use it. Again, every photographer, every archive has different feelings about what they allow and don't allow. And I thought this was fine. So I can't talk about my mother or my father without talking about Little Fugitive. Just briefly, they made it on a shoestring budget for $35,000, which used to be a secret, but now my father would always say how much it was. And it was a handheld 35 millimeter camera that he made here. This is what I'm trying to get at, with another man, but it was very unique at the time. And the French director, Jean-Luc Godard, wanted to borrow it. And Francois Truffaut said that it helped start the French New Wave, the film. This is my mother and father in front of Audrey Hepburn, who won for Roman Holiday, but they were nominated for an Academy Award for Little Fugitive, which was very unusual because it was an independent film. My father never even went to California in his life, but they did not win. And this was the reason they were there, is because it was the only time in 1954 when I think there were twice when the awards were held in New York. And this is the little boy who came back for the 60th anniversary, Rich Andresco. It's available on Kino now, if you'd like to see the film. It's a classic film about a little boy who thinks he shot his brother and he runs away to Coney Island. So it's very historical. It's in black and white, but it also won the Silver Lion at Venice. And my partner and son went back to Venice again for the 60th anniversary about in 6 or 7 years ago. And just again, a little bit more, this is an archive group I started, and people were sent to me to talk about archives. And this is an annual event that we used to have in person with about 50 people at ICP. All we do is talk about archives and what I do and what everybody else does with galleries and auctions and everything. And it's our 21st anniversary. It was our 20th anniversary last year. We weren't able to really celebrate it properly, but I'm just very, very proud of it. And we started with 5 people. We now have over 200. These are just a couple members with their photos. Dan Kramer is a good friend who's got a tremendous collection of Dylan. Joseph Karsh, Julie Graham, who's our VP, has 15,000 photos, sitting records, and maybe photos on the website. Peter Angelo Simon has a beautiful book about Muhammad Ali, and Sam Shaw archive Marilyn Monroe and many others. We take trips. We went to the Gordon Parks Foundation. We went to the Avedon Foundation, to the New York Times. Now we do Zoom meetings. We had 26 Zoom meetings last year. David Hume Kennerly was a guest. Spontaneously, he has shot 9 of the last presidents, and his presentation was terrific. And last week, just the other day, we had Bob Gruen, who was one of the best known rock and roll photographers and shot the iconic photo of John Lennon with the New York City t-shirt. And his book was called Right Time, Right Place, which says it all. And just to finish up, if you haven't seen these or you're not familiar, this is the apartment and the view I grew up in that my mom lived in my parents moved in 1955. So my mom lived there for 30 years. And then my dad, till he passed away in 2005, for 50 years. And it was pretty incredible because there was always something going on. There was always changing scenery. It snowed a little in New York today. I guess a lot of the US, it did snow, I assume in St. Louis. But there was a lot going on. This is the Tavern on the Green. They used to have all these lights. It was called, this is called Tavern Lights. This is Dark Skies. This is balloon. Every so often there were just strange things that went on. And this is a balloon landing in Sheep Meadow was right in front. This is the first New York City Marathon, the start with 120 people. And I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I'm here with my father, 1970, 121 people. Now there's 50,000 who start. And this is what it used to look like sometimes with the Philharmonic concerts, which was amazing and exciting. And we couldn't hear the concert, but we could hear some of it, but not too loud. But it was always an event. It was always very exciting. There was so much going on. The presidents used to land in Sheep Meadow. There was a lot of things that happened. Just quickly, this is the American Girl in Italy. This was the 60th anniversary of the photograph. This is Jinx, obviously, incredible woman. She was a dear friend my whole life, to my mother and then to me. She passed away 2.5 years ago, but at the age of 90. And this is a gallerist, Stephen Bolger. We had a big show. My whole family went there for the week, and we had a great time. And the photo just lives on and on and on. We talked about redoing it and making a big production, going to Italy, et cetera, but that never happened. And all of a sudden, it just happened with a local restaurant up there, and they did this article about it. And here's the picture. It was just an attempt. It wasn't meant to completely recreate it, but she had a good time and enjoyed it. Just a 30-second primer on the negatives in the archive. This is how my mother kept her negatives. The proof sheet cut and attached to the actual negative strip. It's archival materials, but you're not supposed to use tape, which she did, and you're not supposed to write on them. But it certainly makes an easy way for me to find the negative when I'm looking for something. This is the back of a print. Again, her work, it's very inconsistent because she had no idea back in the 50s that it would matter how things were signed or stamped. She was not doing them and printing for a fine art market. She was printing and keeping track of things just because. So this is the back of the Joan Crawford print, and you see the different stamps. This is a lifetime print, which means it was just printed later, but still during her lifetime. Judy Collins, who she shot and became a friend. This is a posthumous print that I print now and sign as the director and the daughter. This is the embossed signature stamp that's on every posthumous print. Just quickly, this is right now going on, this solo auction at Bonham's for the 100th anniversary. Her 100th birthday, which would have been in September. It's her centennial this year, which you may have read about. So we did this auction at Bonham's, just showing you a couple pages. It's a real variety of what's offered. There is something like this that's signed, and so there's a bigger value on it. Then there's posthumous prints that are at a lower price point. There's some personal items like this. This is a photo I had never printed before that I think is beautiful, and a couple of people have commented on, so we'll see how it goes. This is the letter from Orson Welles. You can read about it in the Bonham's auction, but basically she had a lifelong interest in film and kept a film diary when she was a kid, and then had a connection to Orson Welles and wrote to him, and he wrote back. I don't know if you can read this, but it says, I do hope you like Citizen Kane when you see it. And it was sitting in a drawer for a long time. So I'm offering, this is what the archive looks like, sort of, my cousin. These are all the books that have been done, and we're working on a new book that should come out in the fall. There'll also be a show at a new museum in the city called Fotografiska, a traveling show in Europe, a show at Tanglewood, hopefully. So a bunch of things planned, and everything is listed on the website. This is me and my mom. This is her old, the bedroom, which was a slash studio. This is my favorite photo of her that Irene Halsman, who's the daughter of a well-known photographer, Philippe Halsman, shot in the park. This was a cake we made for my dad's 100th. Hopefully we'll make a beautiful cake for my mom's. It's got a film camera, still camera, and the parachute jump from Coney because of the movie. And this is my new logo for my mom's centennial that my friend Christine Zamora made, who is one of my high school WashU friends. So and we've worked together on everything. So thank you to Christine. And that's it. So thank you so much. And I think that I will take questions if anybody has any. And I think Suzanne's going to help me out with that.
Well, thank you so much, Mary, for giving us that insight into your life and your mother's life and your father's and all the amazing work that was achieved in their lifetime. I'm going to start with some questions that we had from registrations when people came in. And so we can start with those. One was, did your mother's camera equipment change much during her career? And was there any significant technology improvements?
Oh, it definitely changed because she first started with a Brownie, then she went to 2 1/4, and then the big deal was when she got a 35 camera. But what's interesting is that even later on, when she got a Nikon, as I showed you, that's being one of the ones that's being sold in the auction, she never had tremendous equipment. She had the Nikon, obviously 35 millimeter, but it wasn't about the equipment. It was about the eye. And she used to say that she would let her finger freeze before she clicked the shutter. It was really just about her eye. She shot very conservatively. She didn't shoot and have tremendous amounts of film from anything. Even the American Girl in Italy or Penn Station, there's anywhere from 3 to 5 rolls of 36 images each. That's it.
Someone wanted to know what your mother said about Einstein.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it, but basically he was very patient, and he was supportive, because she had to take a photo of him with every single man who had given money to Princeton, and then she was at a lunch with him after. But I don't have any more information than that, other than that he was patient with her when she changed the film, which is important. He wasn't rushing her or anything like that. And that's all I remember at this point.
Let's see. How about, are you familiar with Vivian Dorothy Mayer? And what do you think of her photos?
Yeah, I mean, that's a long story, but I'll make it brief. It's, if people aren't familiar, it was a woman who was a photographer, who was a nanny, and her whole archive was found in a storage locker in Chicago. And a man bought it, and then different people bought different parts of it, and then different dealers had it, and there's different legal issues as to whether there were heirs or not. I mean, the work is terrific. It's tremendous. There were no heirs or kids like myself to actually do it. So all these people who were connected were either dealers or interested parties. And it's terrific. They are able to scan everything. So if you're able to scan so much of an archive, you're going to see a lot of great stuff. But there's no question she was a wonderful photographer. But why she didn't show it at all during her lifetime, we'll never know.
I see on the Criterion channel, there's a film by Ruth and Morris called Lovers and Lollipops. Mm-hmm. Can you speak about that?
Sure. So that was the second feature they made together, the only two. And then my dad went on and made 2 more on his own. But Lovers and Lollipops was also about a little girl. Little Fugitive was about a little boy. So Lovers was about a little girl who was a daughter of us, had a single mother living on the Upper West Side, and sort of the trials and tribulations of her going out with somebody and going around the city. And it's interesting. There was a whole scene in Macy's that's really interesting. And the director, Todd Haynes, was influenced by aspects of the film for the film he made called Carol. And we did a special screening with Carol and with Lovers and Lollipops. And it's just interesting to see how different photographs, different films resonate with people today for many different reasons. So it's also shown. And there's a whole new box set that, since you brought it up, Suzanne, that's being released by Kino Lorber, who's our distribution company in the US, and by Carlotta Films in France, of all the films. So it's the collected films of Ruth, Orkin, and Morris Engel. And there's the 2 features. There's a 3rd feature called Weddings and Babies with my father made. There's a 4th feature that's never been released. It's a hippie film called I Need a Ride to California from 1968 that's in color. All the other films were black and white. And then there's some extra footage on those 2 box sets in terms of commercials and shorts and home movies. And so it's been fun getting those all together.
Speaking of certain things in color versus black and white, someone comments that the pictures are beautiful. Each one is speaking 1,000 words. And what would be the effect if you think that those photos were in color?
That's an interesting idea. I mean, I think they the black and white, they sort of stand on their own. You can always, people have sort of tried to colorize American Girl in Italy here and there. I just found some on the web. It's not necessary because it is what they are basically, and I think they stand on their own. You know, again, you can look on the web and see people who have colorized American Girl in Italy, and it holds up too. I mean, it's not that one is better than the other. It's just that I see them the way she saw them for the original black and white, which is what she shot them in.
Gail Green says that she was introduced to your mother via a magazine article. She believes it was in Ms. in the 1970s. Can you comment or give any further background on how that feature came about?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly know she was definitely in Ms. I can't remember exactly what the article was, but certainly my mom loved Ms. magazine. She was a feminist. In you know, not politically tremendously active, but certainly as a female pioneer photographer, you'd have to be a feminist. I'm a feminist in the same vein. I think that depending on what the year was, there was a lot of press. She had when the 3 books came out. So and keep in mind, the first show for her fine art photography was really 1974 at Nikon House in New York City, and then the late 70s at Whitkin Gallery that represented her for a long time. And there were 3 books, 2 of the window books, one in 78, one in 83, and then her retrospective called a photo journal, which was in 1981. So the article, you know, may have been about one of the books. I don't remember exactly what it was about.
Someone had asked, what is your favorite of the books?
I mean, it would have to be a photo journal because that has everything in it. And then that's the one from 1981. That's her monograph. And that's what we're going to try to not redo, but we're going to try to do a new monograph for this year since she hasn't had a book for that long. But I'm also very proud of the 3 catalogs. And one of them I did entirely on my own. That's the catalog with the man in rain on the cover for the ICP exhibition in 1995. I went, you know, I had it designed. I went up on press. I selected the photos with my designer, and I'm very proud of that as well.
Did your mother have other jobs throughout the years to supplement her photography? And if so, what were those?
That's a good question. The answer is no. She had other jobs before she became a full-time photographer. Lots of jobs when she was younger. You know, she talks about, I don't have them in front of me right now. I wish I did, but I mean, she was a soda jerk. She sold programs at the Hollywood Bowl. You know, as I said, she was a nightclub photographer. But once she started shooting, she was really very successful, primarily from 1945 to 1955, and then made the films, and then had me and my brother in the late 50s, early 60s. But she did always talk about the struggle in the 60s and 70s because the magazines had folded and there just wasn't as much work. So there was tremendous sort of glamour and acclaim early on, and then it sort of waned, and then it came back once fine art photography became more recognized in the gallery world.
Several people are asking if this recording is going to be available. So while we're asking the questions, I do just want to examine that. I just posted a link to the Washington University Alumni Association YouTube channel where you can view this following the event. Can you comment on the Photo League and your parents' involvement with them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I said some of it earlier, but it was an incredibly important organization that everybody was a part of who was in New York at the time or came through New York. The biggest names, Paul Strand and Robert Capa and Bernice Abbott, even if they weren't members, were part of it. And the Photo League they had a headquarters, and they had classes, and they had competition. They had these scavenger hunts, and they had exhibitions, and they had these projects. And as I said, my father did this one called Harlem Document. There was another one called Park Avenue. There were a lot of people who did the Lower East Side. And it was really important. And there's one woman in my archive group who's still living. Well, there's a couple people still living, not that many, but actually I'll mention 2. Sonia Handelman Meyer is 100. And she spoke at my APAG meeting last year, and it was amazing. And she had a very good memory of how important the league was for her, and how incredibly awful it was when the government shut it down in 51. And then Marvin Newman is a good, dear friend who's was very important in the Photo League. He comes to my meetings. I'm sure I'm leaving out other people, but it was just an important organization, and people have tried to recreate it in a sense, but it sort of just had a life of its own. And the movie was made about it, would enlighten people if they're interested, called Ordinary Miracles, that was Nina Rosenblum and Danny Allentuck did, and I was a contributing producer on it. So we got to know all of the people very well. We had some reunions. We had there was a big book signing at a gallery, and there are a couple books out on the Photo League as well.
Helen Kornblum, who I believe that you asked or commented, I think your mom photographed from her window when she was sick with breast cancer, and what amazing resilience and determination. And do you think that characterizes her?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Hi, Helen. Helen, as I mentioned, is a very, very dear friend and a wonderful, wonderful woman in many respects. I mean, I think the resilience that my mother had was evident from the very beginning, just from the bike trip, the amount of confidence and the amount of hardships that she went through. I didn't mention also that when she was younger, my grandparents, they were on relief and they moved 12 times. And, things can look a certain way and then are actually a different way. But in terms of the cancer was very, very traumatic, because she would be well for a while, and she'd have a show, and then she'd be very ill. She had it for 18 years. So I think you have to have resilience to have a serious cancer. And there's a lot more backstory to that, but I think that's as much as I'll share. But of course, she had tremendous resilience, and I think it's evidence not only because of fighting her illness, but her whole life story, and how creative and how much initiative she used everywhere, because a lot of the work was not done on assignment. Some of it was, but there are plenty of stories of when she was shooting, Brando, and she heard that Montgomery Clift and Hitchcock were shooting I Confess on another set. So she'd go over there. And there's so many stories of, she'd be walking in the street and meet somebody, and she'd seize the moment and say, "Can I shoot you?" or this and that. She definitely taught me to have tremendous confidence and to take advantage of wherever you are, in the right way, of course. But I think her photos are evident of the sort of large person she was, in terms of the great amount of interests and what she accomplished. And she passed away when she was 63. So imagine if she had 20 more years or something. But I always say also, I'm incredibly lucky. It's a wonderful legacy, but a huge responsibility to do what I'm doing. But I'm incredibly proud of it, and I'm thankful to be able to share all the work with an audience like today, and with the centennial coming up and all the shows and books. And it's a wonderful way for me to keep the connection with her going after all these years.
Well, we're honored that you're sharing this with us today. Barbara Pollard had asked, how do you recommend people archive their family photos?
Oh, that's a big question. I still need help. No, honestly, that's a huge question. But I think the one thing you can do is certainly put things by date or by subject. That's what I try to do. The other thing is not to keep everything. I mean, I've been going through lots of snapshots that I have from when I'm a kid, and you just don't need it all. You need to also put it in scrapbooks, keep the special things in scrapbooks. Obviously these days, you need to figure out a way to, which I'm also in the process of doing, of how do you digitize it and keep it on the right flash drive or drives for your kids or for the future. And you have to update those all the time. So that's not a 2-minute answer. I know that's not sufficient, but do whatever you can to save the best ones, and don't save everything, because you probably don't need it all.
Well, I think I had discussed some of the questions with you earlier, and you had talked about, someone had asked, my kids have taken about 1 million pictures on their
Right.
phones. And does this alter the meaning of photography? And you had commented on that.
Yes. Yeah. Same thing. Should I elaborate? I mean, you know, again, the most important thing is to, if you're going to shoot, keep it somewhere where you can find it again. Otherwise, what's the point of having taken the photo? And then don't lose the moment of what you're doing and why you're there. I mean, I find myself doing that. And you certainly see people all the time shooting artwork or shooting everywhere, where they are, if they're somewhere, and they miss the actual event that they're at. So I think just really being an editor when you're shooting is really important, especially now with the phone, and also just decluttering everything you have. Don't keep every photo by any means. That's my philosophy.
Okay, so I'm going to take one last question that someone had submitted, and I think it might be a little bit more lengthy one, but someone wanted to hear your thoughts about the legacy of women artists and how very few are household names, and how does this manifest in present day inequality and lack of representation in museum collections?
Yeah, well, that's a big question, but I'll tackle that for a couple minutes. It's changing. It's changing dramatically, as we all know, and there are a lot of names that are household household names that are major photographers from a long time ago, such as Bernice Abbott, Margaret Burke White, Helen Levitt, and many others. There's a new show opening at the National Gallery that was unfortunately postponed. It's called The New Woman Behind the Camera, and it includes over 120 women photographers. There are so many ways that it's changing. I was on the phone this morning with a Zoom with an organization called 100 Heroines, which is all about women photographers, and we're going to do something in September to honor my mom. There's a lot of young contemporary photographers that I'm friends with, and there's all different organizations, there's websites, and I just think it's changing, and all we can do is keep promoting, good photography, keep promoting women photographers, keep promoting even any photographers, and that's what's important.
Can you just go over when someone asked about when the Grafiska exhibit scheduled?
That was good. Yeah. Sure. I'm sorry, Suzanne. It's still tentative. It's probably at the very earliest in the fall, but everything is just up on hold for the moment. And that's why I think you don't see it on their website yet, because it's on hold, but it's definitely scheduled at some point, and hopefully the fall, and if not, 2022. If anybody's in New York and you haven't been there, it's an amazing landmark building that used to be the Children's Society. It's beautiful on 22nd and Park Avenue South, and it's just a beautiful way to see photographs, not with plain white walls. They have dramatic lighting. They have different presentations for every different photographer that they show. And I'm really pleased and looking forward to it. It'll be a solo show for several months of Ruth, probably at least, 30 or 40 photos, if not more.
Well, I just want to once again thank you for giving us this opportunity today to see these works and hear your stories. I think everyone really enjoyed it. I'm speaking for everybody there. I also just want to thank everyone for joining us. And we hope that we will see you at some upcoming events. I just posted a link to our digital resources and virtual connection page, so you can go see what else is scheduled. Please visit the Washington University Alumni Association YouTube channel. I posted that link earlier, but you could also Google that, and we will have the recording of this event if you want to go back and look at it or share it with other people. We always want to hear about some event ideas, or if you'd like to hear certain speakers, so you can email us at alumniassociation@wustl.edu. And Mary, thank you again. I hope you have a great evening, and thanks for enlightening us with all of this beautiful work from your mother.
Great. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.